Today's story is a recent one occurring in July 2023, with the latest developments just 2 months ago. This case doesn't involve a lot of mystery or complicated details, but I chose it because it reflects a reality some people face nowadays, though not exactly the same, as this story ended tragically. As always, before we start, don't forget to hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments. Let's dive into today's case. Our story revolves around a 29-year-old mother of two named April Holt. April lived in Tennessee, USA, and was a TikToker with 200,000 followers. Before becoming a content creator, she worked as a lash extension specialist. However, she left her job to start her own business from home, creating short videos on TikTok. This new endeavor was very important to her, and she was thrilled about it. April's mother, Jamie, 49 years old, had separated from April's father when she was young, so April spent her childhood split between her mother's care and her stepfather's household. April was married to Donovan Holt, 33 years old. But before their marriage, she had a daughter named Serenity from a previous relationship. After marrying Donovan, they had a son, Denzel. At the time of this story, her daughter was 12 years old and her son was 8. April frequently shared her daily life on TikTok, focusing on positive videos about manifesting the life you desire. Sometimes she posted motivational content, while other times her videos were comedic or featured moments with her family. Over the years, she shared heartfelt messages, often accompanied by her husband, Donovan. Together, they talked about their ups and downs, emphasizing how they overcame challenges in their lives. Their followers knew their life story, including how they started as friends, got engaged, and eventually married. In some videos, they even discussed how they briefly separated but remained close friends during that period. April had described Donovan as her best friend and shared that they had faced financial struggles which took a toll on their mental health and led to depression. Opening up about personal problems online is never easy, but April believed that sharing her journey could inspire her followers to overcome their own challenges. However, it seems she hadn't entirely overcome her own struggles. On Friday, July 28, 2023, April called her mother Jamie in the morning. They planned to go to the movies together later that afternoon. However, April later told Jamie that she wouldn't be able to make it, and they agreed to meet at church the following day instead. Just hours after that call, Jamie received a phone call she would never forget. Donovan was on the other end, and his voice was filled with alarm. He told her that April had been rushed to the hospital. Their son had found her in the shower with a plastic bag over her head, unconscious. Her mother, Jamie, rushed to the hospital immediately, but when she arrived and saw Donovan, she felt something was off about his behavior. He was pacing back and forth in the hospital corridor, holding his head and shaking it. What struck her as odd was that he left her to talk to the doctors, understand April's condition, and make decisions about her treatment. Sadly, 3 days after being admitted to the hospital, on July 31st, April passed away. Shortly after her death, the doctor wrote a detailed report and determined the cause of death. However, what was written in the report was far from what Jamie, April's mother, had expected. The doctor stated that the cause of death was asphyxiation due to the plastic bag wrapped around her head. He mentioned that there was no evidence suggesting foul play, no gunshot wounds, knife injuries, or anything of the sort. As a result, the police concluded that it wasn't a crime, but rather a tragic accident and a reckless decision by April to harm herself by placing a plastic bag over her head and securing it with tape. This theory was supported by April's final TikTok videos, where she openly admitted, "I'm feeling depressed these days. I know this is negative energy and I'm attracting negativity into my life, but I'm trying my best to stay positive." The videos, along with the medical examiner's report, convinced the investigators that there was no crime involved. They informed Jamie that her daughter's case was closed because there was nothing to investigate further, but Jamie strongly disagreed with their decision. She told them, "If you're not convinced this is a crime, I'll investigate it myself," and walked away. Jamie knew her daughter very well. She knew April was strong and determined. Even if she was feeling a bit depressed, she would never harm herself, let alone leave her two children behind, whom she deeply loved. Jamie was convinced that someone else was responsible for her daughter's death. She had a strong suspicion about who it might be. Just 2 weeks before her death, April had filed for divorce from Donovan. This wasn't the first time they had issues in their relationship. A few years ago, they had considered divorce and even separated for 3 years. During that time, they appeared in TikTok videos together, telling their followers, We've separated, but we're still friends and love and respect each other. During their separation, they continued making videos together, appearing happy, and perhaps they truly were, as they eventually reconciled. They returned to TikTok as a couple, sharing stories of forgiveness and starting fresh. However, it was clear that things had fallen apart again. This time, April was determined to divorce Donovan for good. She had told her mother she was firm in her decision not to reconcile. It seemed Donovan knew she was serious this time. Jamie later discovered that just a week before April's death, Donovan had pawned his wedding ring, which indicated he was certain she wasn't coming back. April's son told his grandmother Jamie that on July 28th, the day April was found unconscious and taken to the hospital, he overheard his parents arguing. However, no one knows exactly what they were arguing about. Jamie began sharing videos online about what happened to her daughter, expressing her suspicions about her son-in-law. In one of these videos, she revealed that April had woken up that morning, had coffee, and was later in the bathroom with Donovan when an argument broke out between them. Their 8-year-old son heard them arguing in the bathroom but went to his room and didn't pay much attention. A short while later, Donovan went to his son's room, made him lunch, and after the boy ate, he asked him to check on his mother. That's when the boy found April in the shower, unconscious. Emergency services were called. In her videos, Jamie called for justice for her daughter. She wanted as many people as possible to stand with her to pressure authorities to reopen the case. She reached out to the media and celebrities, sharing April's story on social media, hoping someone would help. Unfortunately, no one seemed interested in her daughter's case. Neither the media nor any public figures responded, especially since it was highly unlikely the case would be reopened. Despite this, Jamie remained determined, trying every possible way to get the investigation reopened. However, the police consistently told her there wasn't enough evidence to charge Donovan with anything. Months passed, and Jamie was fighting tirelessly to uncover the truth. She requested her daughter's file, filed an official complaint with the municipality, and finally approached the police. After all these efforts, the authorities agreed to reopen the investigation. 4 months later, the new investigation concluded, but the result was the same. The cause of death was deemed to be self-inflicted, and it wasn't considered a crime. However, what was different this time was that the investigators compiled a detailed 47-page report on April's condition in the hospital, documenting all the evidence they had gathered. Jamie began reading the report piece by piece, carefully studying it and trying to make sense of the evidence documented in it. At the same time, she was juggling the responsibility of taking care of her 2 grandchildren. She even published a book expressing her grief for her daughter and how she was coping with the tragedy. Jamie also became an activist against domestic violence and toxic relationships between spouses. During this period, Donovan moved to another city and requested that his son come live with him there. Keep in mind that the daughter was not his child, only the son. The boy didn't want to leave his grandmother or his sister. At the same time, Jamie didn't want to pressure him to choose between staying with her or moving with his father. Jamie's relationship with Donovan at this time was extremely strained, as she suspected him from the beginning. She continued studying the report she had obtained from the investigators, and indeed she found the evidence she had been looking for. This evidence was extremely critical. Surprisingly, the investigators had overlooked it, perhaps because they were convinced from the start that it wasn't a crime. In the initial investigation, the police claimed that there were no signs of struggle on April's body, such as cuts, bruises, or anything similar. But her mother, Jamie, stated otherwise. She observed clear bruises on her daughter's body while she was in the hospital. Moreover, the forensic reports documented clear marks on her neck, thigh, and ankle, as well as an internal injury on her thigh. The most critical evidence in the second investigation was entirely ignored in the first one. A single fingerprint was found on the bag over April's head, along with 2 fingerprints on the adhesive tape. These fingerprints did not belong to April, but matched her husband, Donovan Holt. If we were to assume the investigators' theory was correct, that April placed the bag on her own head, then her fingerprints should have been present on the bag and tape. Yet there were no traces of her fingerprints at all. In September 2024, Jamie confronted Donovan with the findings. She told him about the information in the report, highlighting that only his fingerprints were on the bag. During the conversation, Jamie demanded the truth, warning him that if he didn't confess, She would escalate the matter to the cold case unit to reopen the investigation with the new evidence. Jamie was stunned when Donovan admitted everything. She immediately went to the police, informed them of her son-in-law's confession, and provided them with the recorded admission. Thanks to the evidence Jamie provided, the case was reviewed and the cause of death was officially changed to homicide. On September 20th, 2024, Donovan Holt was arrested in San Antonio. He confessed to the investigators that he had killed his wife. He was charged with evidence tampering in a homicide and filing a false report. Donovan recounted the same story he had told Jamie. On the day of the incident, he argued with April and became extremely angry. In a moment of rage, he strangled her. To divert suspicion from himself, he placed her in the shower, put a plastic bag over her head, and sealed it with adhesive tape to make it look like she had done it herself. Afterward, he prepared lunch for his son. Once his son had eaten, Donovan told him to go check on his mother. The boy found her in the shower and called emergency services. Two despicable acts stand out in Donovan's actions. He made his 8-year-old son discover what had happened to his mother just to make his story more convincing. This careless act left the child with a traumatic image that would haunt him for life. After strangling her, April was still alive. He could have saved her by calling for help, but instead he sat with his son, prepared lunch, and waited until his son finished eating. Now April's children live with their grandmother. Jamie, after Donovan's arrest, thanked her supporters for standing by her throughout the past year. Sadly, her happiness was short-lived. Donovan's trial took place on October 23rd, 2024, and he was charged with manslaughter. He was sentenced to only 12 years in prison. Jamie and her family were outraged by the verdict. She resumed making videos, declaring that her fight wasn't over. She demanded a harsher sentence, insisting that the charge should be first-degree murder. In her personal opinion, and in mine as well, Donovan's crime was deliberate. He chose to let April die when he could have saved her by calling for help. And that concludes today's story. I know it's somewhat short as it didn't have many details and is quite recent. Let me know your thoughts on today's case. See you soon in a new episode. Take care.